Hey, welcome back, everyone. In our worlds, high standards. That isn't just a buzzword. It's not a catchphrase. It's the baseline for staying alive and getting the job done. But the part that you might not like to hear. In general, civilian world doesn't really care about what we do. I'm not saying they don't respect our service, because they do. And they'll thank you for it when the time is right for them. But that professional culture that you're eventually going to move into isn't going to change its way of doing things just because you show up with a folder full of accommodations and achievements. They have their machine, and it'll be running long before you ever get there. So you can't expect your next world to overhaul its systems, slow its pace, or change their attitude of, it's good enough, just to accommodate your expectations. And don't kid yourself. There's going to be some friction. It's inevitable. Call it growing pains. Yes, you're going to be more than functional, but you just have to make sure you're reading their map, not yours. If you keep expecting that the next world will adjust to you, you're going to end up frustrated and isolated. And then you're going to wonder why nobody else sees the obvious problems that you see. Your mission is changing, and the most dangerous move you can make is assuming your old SOPs are going to work in this new AOR. But before we go further into this subject, let's take a quick break. Do you look forward to that first cup of coffee of your morning? Then Blue Line Roasting is the choice for you. They're a Tennessee-based, law enforcement-owned company, roasting small batches of premium coffee, fresh, within 48 hours of your ordering. And they ship it fast so it doesn't sit around getting stale. From Patriot, their light roast, to Failure Drill, their dark roast. Whole bean or ground, they've got you covered. But Blue Line Roasting is more than just good coffee. A portion of every purchase goes to support law enforcement families who are dealing with line-of-duty injury or loss. So your morning routine becomes something bigger. Grab a single bag, try a sampler pack, or get a subscription set up so you're never caught without it. Also, shipping is always free. And for the listeners of this podcast, use the promo code TRANSITION10 to get 10% off your order. Head over to bluelineroasting.com and make your morning count. One of the deepest parts of your identity right now isn't just the work you do. It's the fact that you do it within a system where the lines are clearly defined. You know how the job gets done, and you know the chain of command. But as you look towards your next chapter, you've got to prepare for the reality that the civilian world often operates in, let's call it, a fog of ambiguity. You're going to find that their world functions with a lot more interpretation than you're used to. You're going to walk into meetings where the objective is vague, or you're going to be assigned a project where the standard and the outcomes hasn't actually been defined yet. And for someone who's spent, more than likely, a decade or more relying on direct communication and rules, this lack of structure won't just feel different. It's going to make you feel like that new environment is pure incompetence. You're going to find yourself sitting there thinking, how does anything get done around here? And it's easy to look at that lack of structure and assume that the organization is broken or that the people running it are ineffective. But here's the perspective shift you need to start working on now. The system isn't necessarily broken. It just functions on a different frequency. In many civilian cultures, that wiggle room is where the creativity and the business happen. If you don't recognize this as a cultural difference rather than a failure of leadership, your frustration is going to start seeping from your pores. You're going to start pushing for clarity, but you're going to do it in a way that comes across as aggressive or rigid. And when you act out of this frustration, you aren't fixing anything. You're just branding yourself as problematic or inflexible, maybe even before you've had a chance to show your real value. The emotional pressure here is about your need for control. When the rules are blurry, you can feel like you don't have a firm grip on the mission. But the reality is that your ability to navigate that ambiguity while keeping your cool is actually the skill that's going to make you indispensable. It's about learning to be okay with the gray space and realizing that if you can't learn to take a breath through the ambiguity, you'll be the only one who ends up feeling trapped. This friction is the realization that the glue holding the team together won't be what it used to be. And that's going to be a hard thing at first. Because right now, you're surrounded by people who get it without ever having to say a word. There's a shared training and a common level of experience. This isn't just a group of coworkers. It's a mission-driven community where the sense of belonging is a constant. It's a steady rhythm in the background of everything that you do. You probably take it for granted because it's always been there. There's that unspoken understanding that everyone is moving towards the same objective. But the second that you step into the civilian world, the hum of that rhythm is going to go silent. And the silence is going to feel a lot heavier than you expect. The loss of camaraderie is often the most profound emotional friction point because it changes how you perceive everyone around you. In our world, you're used to high-stakes environments where loyalty is a requirement for survival. When you transition, you're entering a space where workplace interactions can feel transactional, shallow, or even indifferent by comparison. You'll see teams, but they're actually made up of just a collection of individuals working on separate tasks. The emotional gap is dangerous because it creates a lens of judgment. When you don't feel that deep, familiar connection with your new colleagues, your brain is going to try and fill in the blanks. You might start misinterpreting normal civilian behavior as a lack of commitment or a sign that they aren't serious about the work. You'll feel like an outsider looking in, and that isolation can quickly turn to resentment. However, you have to realize that just because they don't share your history doesn't mean that they don't have value. And just because the environment isn't mission critical doesn't mean that the relationships are meaningless. If you're looking for that firehouse kitchen table in a corporate break room, you're going to be disappointed every single day. If you don't prepare for this loss of community, you'll spend your transition trying to find your people by looking for carbon copies of the men and women you serve with now. You'll end up ignoring the very people who could help you navigate your new career because they don't happen to meet your standard of camaraderie. This isn't about lowering your standards for friendship. It's about expanding your definition of what a teammate is. This is a good point to stop and for me to tell you more about the new changes to the podcast. We'll get back to it when we come back. Real quick, let me take a minute to explain what's going on here. If you've been listening for a while, these episodes have been called, or used to be called, Tactical Transition Tips. The mission of the show hasn't changed, but the name has. Going forward, these episodes are now called Your Next Objective, as well as becoming its own standalone podcast. The reason for that is simple. I believe these episodes have grown into something bigger than just a segment inside the Transition Drill podcast. They're focused entirely on helping veterans and first responders think about and prepare for what comes next in your careers and your lives. Separating it into its own podcast makes the episodes easier to find, easier to follow, and easier for new listeners to discover. From now through the end of March, the episodes will still be released in both places, on the Transition Drill podcast and on the new Your Next Objective podcast. But starting in April, the episodes will be exclusively on the Your Next Objective feed. So please, take a second and follow or subscribe to Your Next Objective wherever you listen to or get podcasts, or if you watch on YouTube. Either way, you won't miss any future episodes. And it also helps the new podcast build momentum before the full transition happens. So thank you. Let's get back into this episode. For most people, a job is just something they do. But when you've spent years in a role that demands your total commitment, your identity becomes fused with the mission. You aren't just doing the job, you are the job. This is exactly why your pending transition feels less like a career move and more like an identity crisis. This internal conflict is one of the most significant emotional hurdles you're going to face. When you start looking at the civilian world, you might interpret the need to learn a new professional culture means that you need to lower your standards. You see a world that moves slower, has a different language, and values different things, and your gut reaction is to dig your heels in. It can feel like you're being asked to become a lesser version of yourself just to get along. But here's the perspective shift that matters. The skills that you've spent years honing, the discipline, the integrity, the ability to perform under pressure, those remain with you. They don't disappear just because the context around them changes. The problem isn't that your standards are too high. It's that you're mistaking the way you apply those standards for the standards themselves. Learning to navigate a different culture isn't about compromising who you are. It's about expanding your capabilities so you can be effective in that new environment. A resistance to adapting can sabotage your transition, maybe even before you leave this career. If you decide right now that the outside is a place where you don't belong because they don't value what you value, you'll stop looking for ways to expand your experience that actually helps create value in that next chapter. And mixed in with all this might be some fear. You're scared that without the structure and the uniform, you won't know how to be you anymore. That fear can lead to a rigid mindset, and you end up isolated by your own choices. You have to realize that your identity isn't the uniform. It's the person inside it. The goal is to take the core of who you are and learn how to translate it into a different operating system. If you keep viewing transition as a loss of self, you'll never see it as the opportunity for growth that it actually is. If you don't make the shift, you might find yourself landing a job, but never actually arriving, never settling into a space where you're not just going through the motions. In fact, a very common failure isn't getting fired. It's hitting what can be called the quiet plateau. It's the space where you remain functional and you remain employed, but you never actually get there. You show up, you do your tasks, and you collect your paycheck. But internally, you've checked out. You become a professional tourist in your own career, watching the civilian world operate from a distance because you've decided it's not worth the effort to integrate. This plateau is a dangerous place that you can land. Your boss thinks that you're doing fine because you're reliable and you're disciplined. Your family thinks transition was a success because the bills are still getting paid. But inside, you're stuck. And you might stop pushing for that next promotion, that next bigger project. The emotional weight of this plateau is slow. It's a steady drain on your purpose. You're essentially living in a state of professional limbo, where you have the skills to lead, but you've lost the desire to influence. And this often happens because somewhere along the way, you decided that if the world wasn't going to adjust to you, you weren't going to adjust to it. So you settle. You stop being the person who anticipates problems, and you start being the person who just reacts to them. And this can last for years, even decades. It's a quiet tragedy because it leaves so much of your potential on the table. Avoiding this plateau starts while you're still in the job today. It requires an honest look at your current mindset towards the outside world. If you're already speaking about the civilian world with nothing but skepticism or a sense of us versus them, you're already building the foundation for that plateau. You have to realize that integration is not the same as assimilation. You don't have to become the one of them in a way that erases your history, but you do have to be willing to participate fully in the world where you'll be actually operating. If you don't, you'll spend the rest of your working life feeling like a ghost in the machine. You'll be capable, you'll be functional, but you'll be disengaged from the mission of your own life. The real test isn't just getting the job. It's staying hungry once you have it. Even when the environment feels foreign, this mindset is what separates those who simply survive the change from those who find a way to lead in a whole new theater of operation. Let's take another break, and when we come back, I'll go over the specific transition group tips. The grind doesn't need an introduction. You feel it in the early mornings, in the long days, in those moments when quitting would be easier, but you don't. Grind, spelled GRND, isn't just a brand, it's a mindset. It's the decision to keep moving forward even when progress feels slow and nobody's watching. Founded by a former Army Ranger, Grind Activewear is built around one simple idea: give everything you have and then give more. Rooted in American grit and culture, every piece is designed with purpose and commitment woven into the fabric. It's functional, durable, and built to hold up under real effort. Grind is made for people who outwork the rest. And when you wear Grind, you're not just wearing a logo. You're representing how you live, how you train, and how you show up. So visit thegrindcollective.com. That's the GRNDcollective.com and use the promo code TRANSITION15 for 15% off your order. You're already on the grind. Now wear it. Remember, your transition isn't a single event. It's a process that looks different depending on how much time you have left on the clock or days on the calendar. Adaptation isn't about throwing away the standards that made you who you are. It's about figuring out how those same standards can work for you inside a culture that doesn't speak your language yet. Close range group. If you're looking at your exit within the next year, or maybe you're in the middle of it right now, learn the culture before you try to change it. You're going to be in a window where the pressure to prove yourself is at an all-time high. Your biggest emotional risk will be acting out of urgency. You're going to want to hit the ground running, identify all the practices that are broken, or at least seem broken to you, and then fix their systems. And all of this might happen before you even get your new email working. But trying to do that before you actually understand the why behind how their world operates is a fast track to creating friction. The discipline that you'll need to deploy immediately is restraint. You're going to be the probie again. Keep your mouth closed, your eyes and your ears open. Take the time and watch and listen with humility to learn how decisions are actually made in that new environment. Medium range group. If you've got 3 to 5 years left before your transition, become someone who sees the problems coming. It's easy to get comfortable and assume that your current skill set is all you'll ever need. But the most effective transitions happen when you start developing a different kind of awareness early on. Instead of just being a subject matter expert in your current role, start becoming a student of how systems operate, how they look, how incentives and behaviors drive organizations outside of a command structure. Your goal over these next few years should be curiosity. Start anticipating how problems develop in less structured environments, so you aren't blindsided when you're finally operating in one. Practice this in your current environment and see if you can start identifying issues before they're problems. Long range group. You're early in your career. You've got at least a decade before you even think about hanging up the uniform. You might even think transition doesn't apply to you yet. But the way you build authority now is going to shape how you'll lead later. Study how influence actually works. In your world, authority is often tied directly to a person's rank or their assignment. In the civilian world, influence is a different animal. It's built on credibility, timing, and relationships. You can't just order that stuff into existence. Over the remainder of your career, use that time to gain perspective. Pay attention to how others influence people well, and learn how you can get people to move even when you don't have the hammer of a title or a rank to back you up. However, there's more to this topic as well as transition preparation. To help you keep these gears turning, I put together a weekly newsletter. It has more information on this and other topics, along with extra resources and tools to help you plan for what's next. If you're interested, there's a link in the show notes. I hope you'll go sign up. At the end of the day, you have to expect and accept that the civilian world isn't designed to adjust to the habits, expectations, or the identity that you've built throughout your career. It's a hard truth, but it doesn't mean the standards you live by right now are irrelevant. It just means you have to be smart enough to apply them with an awareness of the environment that you're going to be moving into. The real question isn't whether the civilian world needs to change for you. It's whether you're doing the work right now to prepare yourself to operate effectively inside that new world. The discipline, the loyalty, and that grit that defines your service can still matter in your next chapter. But they only carry influence if you learn where and how those standards actually create value on that side of the fence. Take an honest evaluation of your current mindset. Are you building a bridge or are you digging a trench? Think about that, because the calendar is closing in whether you're ready for it or not. Thanks for staying until the end. Staying all the way through helps the engagement ratings. Please, send me your comments. I want you to be honest. Tell me what you like. Tell me what I'm doing wrong so that I can make changes that are going to best help you. Also, please share the podcast with anyone who you think will enjoy it or benefit from it. And don't forget, please follow the new podcast, Your Next Objective, wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube. Stay safe, and I'll catch you on the next one.